Hey guys, I'm George from MovieWeb. How are you doing?
Pleasure to meet you, George. Pretty good today.
Lovely to meet you, George.
Nice, likewise. So I want to get started, Julia. This is a very interesting project, and it obviously comes from a lot of research and some other stuff you've done. And so I'm kind of curious if you can just give us the background on what inspires it and motivates the work that goes into this kind of world and this issue, really.
Well, I come from a background of social impact filmmaking. I'm very passionate about using film to raise awareness on social issues. And I think I do a lot of volunteer work with foster youth in particular. And hearing a lot of the stories of people that have been in the foster system and fallen through the cracks and ended up on the streets, or had ended up on the streets through running away from abusive familial situations, and then also going out and just seeing the growing problem happening in LA, especially during the pandemic. And I do a lot of volunteer work, so I would talk to people on the streets and hearing their stories and realizing that we have so many different types of people that for different reasons have ended up on the streets. And just saying I want to do something about this. And it seems that I read a lot of neighborhood watch blogs too. And there's so much divisiveness around this topic, with some people having a lot of heart and really wanting, to approach the situation with more compassion. And then another group were like, not in our backyard. We're not having any homeless around here. It's disgusting, etc. That it's a very complex problem. And both sides have a point, and we have to come to a way of solving this that works for all.
It's such a big modern topic, and it is so complex. You put it really well. You speak about the research and the firsthand experience, and I kind of want to ask both of you, because Lucas, obviously this goes into some of the research. Audiences should know that what they're seeing in this film comes from a real place. And I think if you can explain a little bit, each of you, the research and the honesty, and or honoring the honesty of what people go through, so they're not like, well, it's fiction, right? I mean, it is, but you put a lot of, I think you put a lot into trying to be accurate in a way, right?
I agree. We owe the respect to the fact that these are real issues that people are experiencing today, and that it is, like you said, a global issue. And we don't want people to, I don't want to feel helpless to this issue, you know what I mean? I feel like if there's any small way that I can impact this issue, what can I do? And that's something that I feel a lot of people in their day-to-day lives feel helpless to. So absolutely, the research involved in it, I had to lend the respect to the fact that I had not experienced homelessness firsthand. My character Jimmy, his purpose for being out on the street, I would say the reason that he's out on the street, it was because of a fractured household. And that's something that I haven't had to experience to that degree. I do have friends who have experienced homelessness firsthand. I'm more familiar with the homeless community in Chicago prior to working on this film and doing the research on the Sacramento communities. But for me, a lot of it came around to the wintertime. How do people stay warm? That was a huge one. And the hearth, the get-together of family, the community, gathering is how people stay warm, both, physically, and I think there's a mental, comfort that is necessitated, especially during, adverse conditions like the winter. But, that adversity could be just as easily attributed to, the people who look down on individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And like Julia, states that you can't trace the causality of homelessness to one instance, to one issue. There are a multitude of reasons why people end up struggling with housing, whether it's PTSD, they're suffering from substance abuse because they're trying to self-medicate. Mm-hmm. Like you said, there's no real, root that we can say, okay, well, if we just nip this in the bud here, then it will solve the entire issue. The whole point of making a fiction piece about it is to bring awareness to the issue and hopefully reach an audience that normally wouldn't have any business understanding or relating to these characters.
Yeah, Julia, when you're talking about how an audience can kind of connect to this, and like people don't feel like it can happen to them a lot of times, but I think you put a lot of effort into showing how it happens to people. How did you research the process and like discover the ways in which this happens to people who seem stable or seem in a situation where maybe that's unlikely, but then suddenly they are on the street and there's no op?
I love doing research, and so digging deep into an issue is always fascinating to me. I always think if I hadn't gone into being a filmmaker, I'd probably have been an investigative journalist. So prior to making the film, we also made a documentary. So we used our research that we did. We went all around America on a bus and interviewed people living on the streets, experiencing homelessness, people running shelters, people in shelters. I asked, what put people off from going to shelters, why they, how they ended up there. I heard a lot of different stories, some of the problems that they encountered whilst living on the streets. So used all that research to then kind of fine-tune the script and add some deeper elements to it that was based on a lot of the stories that I heard. And one of the realizations that came to me is that everybody's one check away from being homeless right now. That we met so many people who, just through bad luck, bad circumstance, had not been able to keep up with inflation, got evicted because they couldn't pay the rent, and so it ended up on the streets. There was one couple that had dogs with them, and they were living on a tent under the bridge. And I said, so, what happened? How did you end up here? And they said, we've only been here for a week. And I said, well, there are shelters available. I can give you some information on local shelters if you like. And they said, no, we've tried, but we can't get a shelter that can take the dogs. And so they would rather live in a tent with their dogs, because otherwise they knew that their dogs could risk being put down. And those were people that had, like a week earlier, had good jobs and a nice place to live. And so I think the Robert's story, and we've all met guys like Robert, who's very much a chancer, always thinks that he's going to be able to close the next big deal, has leveraged everything to the hilt. Showing how it can happen to them, I felt was important to the film.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, guys. I have to wrap. Great job, and good luck with the film. Thank you.
And please share the word about noaddressfilm.com is where people can find out information on it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.